My name is Nora Hayes. I am 28 years old, and my world is exactly 4 years old. Her name is Mia. Everything else is just noise, or metal scraping against metal. My life is a frantic commute between two kinds of exhaustion. The first shift starts at 5 in the morning, in the stainless steel cold of a prep kitchen, my hands aching as I dice onions and carrots until my fingertips are numb. That job pays for the electricity. The second shift starts at 10 at night, in the bleach and sweat smell of the Newark Community ER, where I'm a registered nurse. That job pays for the roof over our heads. Or at least, it's supposed to. The roof itself is the problem. We're on the ground floor of a building near the port, where the air is always damp and smells like salt and diesel. The wallpaper in Mia's corner, it's not a real bedroom, just a corner of the living room is peeling from the damp. A hard winter is rolling in, the kind that bites your lungs, and the news keeps warning of a major nor'easter building off the coast. I've been juggling the bills, paying a little here, a little there, but I'm sinking. My bank account is a negative number I can't even look at. The landlord, Mr. Petrov, had stopped being polite about it. His last note, taped to our door, was clear I was 2 months behind, and he wanted his money or his apartment. That was bad. But the phone call I got yesterday was worse. Child Protective Services. The voice on the other end was professionally detached, which made it terrifying. Miss Hayes, we received an anonymous tip concerning the welfare of your child. Allegations of neglect. Neglect. The word hit me so hard I had to sit down on the cracked linoleum of the kitchen floor. Neglect. I looked at Mia, who was happily drawing a family of purple seals on a piece of cardboard. I work 36 hours, sleep 4, and spend every second in between making sure she is safe, fed, and loved. I was neglecting nothing but myself. That's impossible, I'd whispered, my voice shaking. Who said that? It's anonymous, ma'am. We just need to schedule a home visit. I knew what that meant. I knew what they would see. They wouldn't see a mother working herself to the bone. They'd see the peeling wallpaper, the old wiring I couldn't afford an electrician to fix, the fact that our fridge held yogurt and eggs but not much else. They'd see poverty and call it neglect. And all my work, all this desperate swimming against the current, it would all be for nothing. They could take her. That fear was a cold stone in my stomach when I finished my ER shift, just after 7 p.m. The hospital was quiet for a moment, the calm before the Friday night storm. I pulled my thin parka tight and stepped out into the biting November air. The bus stop was 2 blocks away, under a streetlight that flickered like a dying heartbeat. The street was empty, except it wasn't. I heard the footsteps behind me. Scuff, drag, scuff, drag, too slow, too deliberate. I didn't look back. I dug in my pocket, my fingers closing around my keys. The longest one pushed out between my knuckles. It was a pathetic defense, but it was all I had. The footsteps got closer. My heart was a drum against my ribs. Then, a different sound, the smooth crunch of expensive tires on gritty pavement, a long, black sedan, a Mercedes. Maybe, or something cleaner, glided to a stop right next to me. It was so out of place in this neighborhood, it might as well have been a spaceship. The back window whispered down. I saw a man in the back seat. He was about 35, with dark hair, a strong jaw, and the kind of olive skin that looked warm even in the freezing cold. He wore a dark, tailored overcoat. He wasn't looking at me like the man with the footsteps. He was assessing me. "You're on the wrong street," he said. His voice was quiet, a low rumble with an unmistakable Italian-American edge, the kind you hear in old Jersey neighborhoods. I flinched, ready to run. "I'm just waiting for the bus." He didn't smile. He just nodded toward the alley across the street. "No, you are—" But they aren't. I risked a glance. The man who had been following me wasn't alone. There was another one, both lingering in the shadow of a boarded-up laundromat. As I watched, they saw the car, saw the man watching them, and just evaporated. They turned and walked away. Fast. My breath came out in a shaky cloud. The man in the car just watched me. "Get in, Nora." My blood froze. How do you know my name?" He reached into his coat and pulled out a wallet, but he didn't flash a badge. He pulled out a business card. He held it out. I stepped closer, reluctantly, and took it. The card was thick, cream-colored with embossed lettering, the St. Gabriel Foundation, Luca Moretti, chairman of the board. St. Gabriel's, the foundation that sponsored the free clinic, the one where I picked up my extra nursing shifts. I'm the chairman. Yes, he said, his voice still impossibly calm. I know you work the extra shifts at the clinic. We appreciate your dedication. He said it like he was discussing quarterly earnings, but his eyes were fixed on my face. It's too cold to wait for a bus that's 20 minutes late. Let me give you a ride. I know. Thank you. I can't. I don't take rides from strangers, especially strangers who scare off other, scarier strangers. It's a rule of survival. He seemed to accept this, but he didn't look happy about it. Suit yourself, but they'll be back. As if on cue, my phone buzzed in my pocket, a blocked number. My stomach twisted. It was CPS again. I knew it, I answered, turning away from the car. Hello? Miss Hayes, this is Carol again from Child Protective Services. I'm calling because the situation has been escalated. Escalated? What are you talking about? You haven't even visited yet. The reporting party just sent us documentation. Miss Hayes, photographs. The world tilted. Photographs of what? Of the interior of your apartment, what she said, and now she sounded colder. There is significant mold visible in the bathroom and what appears to be exposed electrical wiring near your daughter's cot. I couldn't breathe. I was looking at the cracked pavement, but I was seeing my apartment, the mold behind the shower tiles, the outlet plate near Mia's small bed that had cracked last week. How could anyone... The angle of these photos, I whispered. Where were they taken from? I'm not at liberty to discuss, ma'am. They appear to be taken from inside the residence. A camera? Someone put a camera in my apartment. Someone was watching my daughter. I must have made a sound, because when I looked up, Luca Moretti was out of the car. He was standing in front of me, his expression dark. He'd heard. What is it? He demanded. I couldn't speak. I just looked at him, shaking, the phone slipping from my fingers. He caught it. Who is this? He spoke into the phone. I grabbed it back. I have to go. I hung up on the CPS worker. Nora, what did they say? They have pictures, I choked out, from inside my apartment. The mold, the wiring. They think I'm... He didn't look surprised. He looked angry, but it was a cold, controlled anger. He took a long, slow breath. Someone is setting you up, he said. It wasn't a guess. It was a statement of fact. I don't understand who would... Get in the car, he said, and this time it wasn't a request. The nor'easter is coming. You and your daughter can't stay in that apartment tonight, not if people can get in and out of it. No, I said, stubborn, stupid. I have to get Mia. We'll be fine. He held my gaze. I'm offering you a warm, safe hotel room for the night, paid for by the foundation. That's all. A storm is coming. You're a nurse. You know what this damp is doing to a 4-year-old's lungs? Take the help. I was so tired, so scared, but I couldn't be in this man's debt. I have to get home, I said, and I turned and almost ran the last block, leaving him and his black sedan standing by the curb. I fumbled with my keys, my hands shaking so badly I could barely find the lock, but I didn't need to. The door was already open. Just a crack, the deadbolt was still extended, but the wood of the jamb around it was splintered. Someone had jimmied it. Mia, I screamed, shoving the door open. She was there, asleep in her cot, her stuffed seal clutched in her arms. She stirred, murmured, and settled back down. The apartment was freezing. The wind was whistling through the gap in the door. I checked her first, my hands flying over her, checking for I don't know what. She was fine, safe, breathing. I let out a breath and sagged against the wall. Nothing was gone. My old laptop was still on the table. The small bit of emergency cash I kept in an envelope in the freezer was still there. It wasn't a robbery. It was a message. On the small kitchen table, right in the center, sat a small, intricate paper bird, a dove. Mia loved folding paper. She made birds and frogs and boats. But this wasn't her work. This was perfect, the creases sharp as a razor. Underneath it was a small, square piece of paper, not a note, a demand, 4 words, typed. Give back what belongs to them, and you won't be touched. Give what back? I had nothing. I had a negative bank balance and 2 jobs and a daughter I was trying to keep safe. What could I possibly have that they wanted? A sharp knock on the open door made me jump so high I cried out. It was Luca Moretti. He hadn't left, and he wasn't alone. Beside him stood a woman, tall and severe, with the same dark hair and intelligent eyes. She wore a lawyer's uniform, a perfectly tailored gray suit, a silk blouse. She looked like a weapon. "This is my sister, Francesca," Luca said. He looked past me, at the splintered door jamb, at the paper dove on the table. His face hardened into something I didn't recognize. "It seems we're late." Francesca stepped past him, her eyes sweeping the room, documenting everything. She looked at me, then at Mia, and her expression softened, just for a fraction of a second. "Nora, I'm a family lawyer," she said. Her voice was like her brother's, but faster, sharper. "I specialize in advocates for women and children. Luca called me. He was worried." "They broke in," I whispered while pointing at the dove. "They left that." Luca walked over and looked at the note, his hands clasped behind his back. He didn't touch it. Francesca took out her phone and started taking pictures of the door, the note, the dove. "They've been watching you," Luca said quietly. "The photos to CPS were the warning shot. This is the follow-up." "I don't know what they want." "It doesn't matter," Francesca said. "All business. What matters is that this apartment is not secure, and you have a state agency convinced you're a negligent mother. You're in a compromised position." Luca pulled out his phone. "I'm having a service change the locks right now, and I'm calling the precinct. They'll take a report." "The police," I started, but Francesca cut me off. "The police are a necessary formality. They won't solve this." She looked at her brother, then at me. "Nora, the foundation keeps several secure apartments, discretionary use, for women fleeing dangerous situations. We have 1-2 blocks from the clinic." I'm not a battered woman," I said, feeling defensive. "You're a woman whose home was just invaded, who's being blackmailed with her child's safety," Francesca retorted. "Let's not get stuck on labels. The apartment is clean, warm, and secure. 72 hours. That's all we're asking. Give us 72 hours to figure out who is doing this, and to get a protective order against the CPS visit. 72 hours. The storm, the broken lock, the hidden camera, the paper dove." I looked at Mia, sleeping peacefully, unaware that her entire world was splintering. I had no choice. I had no one else. "Okay," I whispered, "just for Mia, for the storm." Luca nodded, a flicker of relief in his eyes. "Go pack a bag for you and your daughter. Just the essentials. We'll wait." 20 minutes later, I was in the back of the warm sedan, Mia bundled in my arms, sleeping against my chest. The new lock was already being installed on my apartment. Francesca was in the passenger seat, tapping away on her phone, already filing something. Luca was driving, his movements smooth and economical. The car felt safe, insulated from the wind and the world, but I knew it was an illusion. We drove in silence for a few minutes, the only sound the thwack-thwack of the windshield wipers. Then, Francesca spoke without turning around. "Nora, I need to ask a difficult question. It's important for your legal protection." "Okay." "When," she asked, her voice quiet but surgically precise, "was the last time you had any contact with Ryan Dalton?" The name hit me like a physical blow. Ryan, Mia's father, the man who had taught me about clinical informatics and coding, who had promised me the world, and who had vanished 2 years ago. Gone, like he'd never existed. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I just stared out the window as the first cold raindrops of the nor'easter began to streak the glass. My reflection staring back at me, a ghost clutching a child. I was freezing, right to the bone. Ryan. The name was a door slamming shut in a place I hadn't visited for 2 years. My entire body went rigid. I pulled Mia closer, her small, warm body a shield against the past. Francesca didn't turn around, but I could feel her waiting. "Nora," she prompted, her voice softer now. Less like a lawyer and more like a woman who knew what silence meant. "He's gone," I said, my voice flat. I hated how small it sounded. He left. 2 years ago, before Mia's 2nd birthday. No card, no call, he just evaporated. "He worked in tech, didn't he?" she pressed. "Clinical informatics," I corrected, the words tasting like ash. "Data management, he was brilliant and he was a liar." Luca caught my eye in the rearview mirror. His gaze was dark, unreadable, but he didn't say anything. He just made a smooth left turn, pulling into a clean, well-lit underground garage. He killed the engine. The silence was sudden and heavy, broken only by the howl of the wind outside and Mia's sleepy murmuring. "We're here," Luca said. The secure apartment wasn't a palace, but it was the cleanest, warmest place I'd been in a year. It was anonymous. All beige carpets and new-smelling furniture, but it had solid locks, thick windows, and a thermostat I could actually control. Mia woke up as I set her down, her eyes wide with confusion. "Where are we? Mommy, this isn't our house." "It's a new place, baby," I said, forcing a smile. "A little adventure, just for the storm." Luca knelt, not too close, and pointed to the big picture window. "See that," he said, his voice dropping that low, rumbly tone. "The storm's coming. We're going to be up high where we can watch it. It'll be loud, but we're safe." Mia, who loved big noises, just nodded, her fear easing. It was the first time I'd seen him interact with her. He wasn't just a presence, he was gentle. It was disorienting. Francesca, however, was all business. She set her briefcase on the dining table and opened her laptop. "Nora, I need to show you something." She turned the screen to me. It was a picture of a sleek, black camera mounted on a utility pole. This looked familiar. It's a Sightline AI camera, part of the Klein Consortium's port security initiative. There's one on the corner opposite your building. I nodded slowly. "I've seen them. They put them up about 6 months ago, supposedly for community safety." Francesca pulled up another window. It was the photo CPS had, the one of the mold in my bathroom. She overlaid it with a wireframe diagram. "We pulled the public-facing specs for this camera," she said. "High-definition zoom, thermal imaging, and a perfect, unobstructed view through your ground-floor bathroom and living room windows." My stomach dropped. "They took these pictures from across the street." "They weren't inside your apartment, Nora," she said. "Not then. They were using a camera, legally installed by the city, to watch you, to build a file on you." I sank into a chair. "But why who?" "That," Luca said, "is the complicated part." He leaned against the wall, his arms crossed. He looked like he was making a confession. "You know the port, you know the names, my family, the Morettis, and the Cavallos." I knew. Everyone in Newark knew. The Morettis were old news, old money, trying to look clean. The Cavallos were new, and they were rough. "Matteo Cavallo runs that family," Luca continued, his voice tight. "He's not smart, but he's vicious. And he has a very smart partner, the Klein Consortium." "The people with the cameras?" "The very same, run by none other than our tough-on-crime district attorney, Beatrice Klein. It's a neat little circle. Cavallo handles the physical side of things, acquiring property, moving goods. Klein provides the tech and the legal cover. Sightline AI isn't for community safety. Nora, it's for control. They are using city contracts to launder money, to squeeze every legitimate business, and to take over the port piece by piece." He finally looked at me, and I saw the exhaustion in his eyes. "My family. My grandfather ran numbers. My father ran loan books. I'm not running from that, but I'm trying to build something else. Something clean. A legitimate logistics and warehousing company. Cavallo and Klein are choking me. They use their Sightline data to see when my trucks are vulnerable, to lose my shipments, To report me for violations the DA's office is very interested in. They are trying to break me or force me to join them. The pieces were scattered all over the table, but they were starting to fit. The note, give back what belongs to them. Ryan, I whispered. He worked for a small accounting firm. They were subcontracted by a shipping company at the port. Luca and Francesca locked eyes. What did he do, Nora? Luca asked, his voice deathly quiet. I looked at Mia. She was on the floor, pulling her stuffed seal from her small backpack, the one toy she'd insisted on bringing, the seal Ryan gave her, her favorite, the one she'd had since she was a baby. He'd called it Salty. He was an accountant, I said, my voice shaking, but he loved coding. He loved finding back doors. He was always talking about inefficiencies at the port, how easy it would be to move things. Move things or move data? Francesca asked. I couldn't breathe. I walked over to Mia. Sweetheart, can Mommy see Salty for just 1 second? I need to check something. She handed him over, trusting. The seal was worn, one eye missing, but I knew what I was looking for. Ryan had restitched a seam on its back right before he disappeared. He said Salty had sprung a leak. My fingers, clumsy with adrenaline, found the seam. It was thicker than the others. Francesca, do you have a knife or a seam ripper? She handed me a small, elegant letter opener from her briefcase. I slid the blade in and sliced the threads. Inside the cotton stuffing, wrapped in a small piece of tin foil, was a dark gray object, a solid-state hard drive. Luca swore, a low, sharp sound. He didn't just leave. Nora, he's hiding. He stole something from Cavallo and Klein, and he left it with you. He used us, I said, the betrayal a fresh wound. He used his daughter as a lockbox. And now they know, Luca said, his face grim. The break-in, the camera, the CPS call. They've been pressuring you, trying to figure out if you knew what you had. The paper dove was the final warning. I looked at the drive, I looked at Mia, and all that exhaustion, all that fear, it burned away, and what was left was rage, cold, clear, and sharp. I turned to Francesca. I'm hiring you? She raised an eyebrow. My retainer is considerable. I'm not paying you with money, I said. I pushed the hard drive across the table. I'm paying you with this. Ryan taught me well. I have a background in clinical informatics. I know data encryption. I know database structures. You get me out of this CPS nightmare. You clear my name. In return, I'm going to help you unlock whatever is on this drive. I'm going to help you burn them to the ground. A slow smile spread across Francesca's face. I accept your terms. Luca looked at me, and for the first time, I didn't see a chairman or a benefactor. I saw a man sizing me up as an equal, as a fighter. Just then, a low, heavy boom vibrated through the floor. It wasn't the storm. This was a concussion, deep and guttural. Mia jumped and ran to me, burying her face in my legs. Luca's phone buzzed on the table. He picked it up, read the screen, and his face went dark. That, he said, was an industrial accident at Warehouse 7, one of Cavallo's own. It just exploded. He looked from the drive to me. He's not just warning you. Nora, he's sending a message to his entire organization. He thinks we have the drive. He's showing them what happens to people who get careless. The wind screamed against the glass, and the lights in the apartment flickered, buzzed, and died. We were plunged into a disorienting darkness, lit only by the green emergency exit sign in the hallway and the chaotic flashes of lightning from the nor'easter outside. The grid is unstable, Luca said, his voice a calm center in the dark. His phone's screen lit his face. And my tech team just sent an alert. The storm is wreaking havoc on the Sightline network. Half the cameras in the Port District, including the one on your street, just went dark. He turned to me, the small, gray drive almost invisible on the dark table. It's a golden window. Nora, he said, if we're going to move, if we're going to see what Ryan stole, now is the time. But I was frozen. Something else had just clicked. My stroller, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Mia's stroller. I left it at the apartment. We need it. The supplies. But that wasn't it. I was remembering kneeling, buckling Mia in, day after day. I remembered wiping crumbs from the seat. "I need to go back," I said, firmer this time. "Francesca, I need you to come with me. There's something I have to check." "Nora, it's not safe," Luca started. "They think we're here," I insisted. "They think we have the drive. They won't be watching the apartment. Not now. Please." Francesca nodded, grabbing her keys. "She's right. They're focused on you. Luca, you stay with Mia. We'll be less than 10 minutes. The drive back was terrifying. The wind slammed the car, and rain was coming down in sheets. My old apartment building was dark, abandoned. The new lock Luca had installed was pristine. Francesca stood at the door, her phone's flashlight cutting the blackness, while I ran inside. The apartment was arctic. The wind howled through the broken jamb. I grabbed the stroller. My fingers fumbled, shaking, as I ran them along the underside of the seat, pushing past the thin fabric support. My fingertips brushed against something, a small, plastic square, held fast with thick adhesive tape. A GPS tracker. I ripped it off, my nails scraping the plastic. I held it out to Francesca. "They weren't just watching from the street," I whispered, the horror rising in my throat. "They were tracking her. They were tracking Mia." We ran back to the car, the nor'easter trying to tear us apart. When we got back to the safe house, Luca had found a backup generator, and a single lamp cast a warm, yellow glow. I threw the tracker on the table. They were tracking my daughter. Luca looked at the small, black device, and his face became a mask of cold, controlled fury I had not seen before. He looked at me, then at the drive. "They put a target on your child," he said, his voice dangerously low. "Francesca, lock us in. Nora, let's get to work." The generator in the corner cast a low, yellow light, humming just loud enough to underscore the screaming wind outside. The safe house didn't feel safe anymore. It felt like a box. The GPS tracker sat on the table between us, a black, obscene little square, a target. Francesca plugged the SSD into her laptop, which was running on its battery. The screen lit up, showing a single, simple password prompt. Above it, a hint, just 3 words Ryan had set the lullaby song. My blood ran cold. He was a monster, but he was a sentimental monster. "What is it?" Francesca asked, her voice sharp. "It's the song I sing to Mia," I whispered. I typed the main phrase, the one I'd sung 1,000 times. "Hush, little baby. Access denied." I tried again. "Don't say a word. Access denied." My fingers were trembling, slippery with sweat. I was failing. "I don't understand. It's the song." Luca had been standing by the window, watching the rain lash the glass. He hadn't moved. "Nora," he said, his voice quiet, not looking at me. "When you were in the ER last week, I was in the administrative wing. I overheard you on the phone with your babysitter." I looked up, confused. "What?" "You were worried about her cough," he said, finally turning. His eyes were intense. "You told the sitter to make sure she was warm. You said, 'I know, my little cricket is stubborn.'" Cricket! My breath caught in my throat. It was my name for her. My private, secret name, born from the sound her legs used to make, rubbing together in her crib when she was happy. Ryan knew I called her that. He'd hated it. I looked at the screen, the lullaby song. My fingers moved, not the lullaby, the listener. Cricket. I hit enter. The drive clicked, Word and a dozen folders flooded the screen. For a second, we just stared. Then, Francesca took over, her fingers flying across the trackpad. It was worse than we could have imagined. It wasn't just accounting. It was a blueprint of a shadow government. There were shipping manifests, hundreds of them, all listing scrap metal or industrial parts. Alongside them were the real manifests, downloaded from a secure port server. They weren't moving scrap. They were moving well. The files didn't say what, but the payments were astronomical. Then, the Sightline folder. It was a calendar. System maintenance. It was labeled, but it was a schedule of planned blackouts. Every Tuesday at 2:03 in the morning, every Thursday at 4:36. The cameras overlooking the Cavallo warehouses went dark for exactly 3 minutes, just long enough. And then, the last folder, Klein Consortium retainers. It was a spreadsheet of payments, bribes, city council members, Port Authority officials, and right at the top, a recurring monthly payment for $50,000, routed through 3 shell companies, landing in a private account labeled B. Klein. Beatrice Klein, the district attorney on TV every night, promising to break the back of organized crime. She's not just turning a blind eye. Francesca breathed, horrified. She's on the payroll. She's directing traffic. "We have to go to the FBI," I said, my voice shaking with a new, wild hope. "This is it. This clears me. This ends it." Francesca slammed the laptop shut. The sudden darkness was absolute. "No," she said, her voice like steel. "What do you mean, no, Francesca? This is the proof." "It's nothing," she snapped, her lawyer's voice back, cutting me to the quick. "It's a stolen hard drive, given to us by the estranged girlfriend of the man who stole it. Beatrice Klein runs this city. She controls the media. She'll have this evidence buried in a procedural error and have you painted as a co-conspirator before we even finish our coffee. And then she will use the full, unchecked power of the state to take Mia from you. She'll call it protective custody. You will lose, Nora. You will lose your daughter in less than an hour." The hope died, replaced by a cold, numbing terror. She was right. Luca, who had been silent, stepped out of the shadows. "Francesca is right," he said. "We can't win a head-on fight, not yet." He looked at me, his face hard. "But we have 2 options." He held up one finger. "Option 1, we leak it, all of it, to the press, to the web. It's chaotic. Klein will fight back. It will be a war, and you and Mia will be ground zero. It's a high risk." He held up a second. "Option 2, we use it as a shield. We go to Klein and Cavallo privately. We show them our hand. We demand they kill the CPS case. Back off my business and erase your existence. Or we release the drive. We use it for a truce." I looked at Mia, sleeping on the couch, her face peaceful. I thought of the GPS tracker. I thought of the paper dove. A truce, blackmail, living under their thumb, hoping they'd keep their word. "No," I said. They both stared at me. "No," I said again, louder. The fear was still there, but the rage was finally bigger. "I am not spending the rest of my life looking over my shoulder. I am not trading this drive for a truce with people who put a tracker on my child, and I'm not starting a war I can't protect her from." I took a breath. "We're doing option 3. My option—" Nora Luca started. "We build a dead man's switch," I said, the plan forming in my head, sharp and clear. "We don't use this to threaten them. We use it to make us bulletproof." Francesca's head tilted. "A data escrow. Insurance." "Exactly, Honor," I said. "We make 3 copies of this drive. Tonight, 1 for you, Francesca, locked away under attorney-client privilege. If they come after me, you release it." I looked at Luca. "You said you knew a journalist, someone who hates Klein." "Jamal Waters," Luca said, a slow smile spreading on his face. "He runs a small, independent news site. He'd die for a story like this." "He gets copy number 2, I said, "and 1 more. Copy number 3 goes to someone they can't touch, someone they can't threaten or buy." "Father Alvarez," Luca and Francesca said at the same time. "He runs the community shelter by the port," Luca explained. "He's the conscience of this city. Even Cavallo wouldn't dare move on a church." "We give each of them a copy," I finished, my heart hammering. "And we set it up. If anything happens to me or Mia, if I'm arrested, if I disappear, if I don't check in every 12 hours, all 3 of them release the data simultaneously. We're not hiding. We're holding a grenade, and we're showing them we've pulled the pin." While Francesca, a tech whiz in her own right, began the secure copy process, I felt a sudden, crushing need for an anchor. I needed something from my world, not this one. I went into the small bedroom, my phone feeling heavy in my hand. I dialed my mother's number in Pennsylvania. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm and sleepy. Nora, honey, it's after midnight. Is Mia okay? We're fine. Mom, I'm fine. I just need to ask you for a favor, a really big one. Anything, baby, you know that. In your jewelry box? Dad's silver compass? The one from the Navy? There was a long silence on the line. Oh, honey, she said, her voice suddenly thick. Of course. Is everything all right? Are you lost, Nora? I close my eyes. I'm trying not to be. I just need it. I need to remember what he told me. Don't let anyone else set your north. I'll overnight it, she said, her voice firm. First thing in the morning. I hung up, feeling a single, thin thread of steel click into place in my spine. I walked back into the living room. Luca was on the phone, his back to me. Oh, he wasn't speaking English. It was fast. Guttural Italian, and he sounded furious. He snapped the phone shut and turned around. His face was granite. What? I asked. That was my head of security. We have a leak. A leak? What do you mean? I mean, Matteo Cavallo just put an open bounty out on the street, he said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. For a 28-year-old nurse, her 4-year-old daughter, and a stuffed seal toy. The air went out of my lungs. A bounty. On Mia. They were hunting my child. I felt the floor drop out from under me. The urge to run, to grab Mia and just disappear, was so strong it made me dizzy. But I looked at the GPS tracker. I looked at the 3 identical drives now lying on the table. Running was what Ryan did. I wouldn't... Then we move faster, I said, my voice shaking but hard. Luca just stared at me. And for the first time, I saw something in his eyes that wasn't pity or authority. It was respect. She's right, Francesca said, already packing her laptop. This apartment is blown. The foundation owns it. They'll be watching it by dawn. A hotel is too public, I said. We're not going to a hotel, Luca said. We're going to the brownstone. My family's home. I recoiled. No, I'm not going to be a prisoner in your mafia compound. He put his hands up, a gesture of peace. It was the first time I'd seen him look vulnerable. Nora, please, it's not a compound. It's a home. It's in Brooklyn. It has reinforced walls, one secure entrance, and a staff that has been with my family for 30 years. Men I trust with my life, not tech, people. He took a step closer, but not too close. I'm asking you. I'm not telling you. I am asking you to let me keep Mia safe. You and she will have the entire 3rd floor. It's a full apartment. No one, not me, not my sister, not my staff will enter it without your express permission. A bounty on Mia. I set my jaw, conditions. He nodded, relief flooding his face. Anything. I am in charge of Mia, her schedule, her food, who she sees. No one touches her. No one talks to her unless I say so. I'm not your guest. I'm her mother. You are providing walls. That is all. Understood, he said, without a flicker of hesitation. You are her mother. That is absolute. We packed our meager belongings in 2 minutes. The storm was a monster outside. Francesca gave me 2 of the drives. Father Alvarez and Jamal, she said. She kept the 3rd. As we headed for the door, Luca paused. One more thing. The leak. I know who it is. I looked at him. How? When I first met you, at the bus stop, I offered you a hotel. I made 1 call to my office to secure the room. Only 1 other person was on that line. My cousin, Sal. My stomach tightened. Your own family. He's weak, Luca said, his voice cold. Cavallo found his weakness, but before we go to Brooklyn, we're going to use him. I'm going to make a call right now. I'm going to tell Sal that we're not going to the brownstone, that we're taking the original drive to a bank vault in Midtown, a decoy. To see if he tells Cavallo. I finished. Luca's eyes met mine, and they were the coldest I'd ever seen. To know he does, you can't heal an infection until you cut it out. The storm will cover our tracks. Let's go. He opened the door to the howling hallway. I hiked Mia onto my hip, her sleeping body a warm weight against me. I clutched the 2 hard drives in my coat pocket. I was walking out of a prison, only to walk into a fortress. I was terrified. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't running from something. I was running toward the fight. We had been in the Brooklyn brownstone for 48 hours. It wasn't a compound, as I'd feared. It was a fortress, yes. But it was also a home. It was quiet, filled with dark wood, old oil paintings of stern-faced ancestors, and a silence that felt heavy. Mia had the run of the third floor, blissfully unaware, drawing pictures of the big house with the crayons Luca had produced from a desk drawer. The decoy had worked perfectly. Luca's cousin Sal had made the call. Within an hour, Luca's real-time surveillance of Cavallo's network showed his men mobilizing, diverting resources to the Midtown bank vault, waiting for a ghost. While Cavallo was chasing shadows, Francesca, Luca, and I were finalizing the real plan. "He'll be furious," Francesca said, pacing the library. "When he realizes the bank vault was a diversion, he'll be looking for us. He'll be desperate." "Good," Luca said, staring out the window at the relentless, driving rain of the nor'easter. "Desperate men make mistakes. He'll agree to the meeting." He had used a burner phone to send one message to a known Cavallo lieutenant: the exchange, tonight, or the drive goes public at dawn. Cavallo had replied in 5 minutes. He named the place a glass-walled restaurant in Hoboken, right on the water, closed for the storm. He thought he was trapping us. He thought we'd be exposed. I felt my mother's package in my pocket. It had arrived that morning, delivered by a private courier Luca had arranged. I hadn't opened it. Not yet. "You don't have to do this, Nora," Luca said, turning from the window. He looked exhausted. "I can send someone else. My best man." "No," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "He's seen me. He's tracking me. He'll only trust it if I'm the one holding the drive. This was my plan. I'm finishing it." He nodded, a darkness in his eyes I was beginning to recognize. It wasn't anger. It was calculation. I finally pulled the small, velvet-wrapped object from my pocket, my father's silver compass. It was heavy, worn smooth. I opened the lid. The needle quivered, steadying itself, north. I slipped the leather thong over my head and tucked the compass under my shirt. It was cold against my skin, a piece of armor. The restaurant was a glass box hanging over the Hudson. The nor'easter was at its peak, turning the river into a violent black chaos. Wind and rain slammed against the windows in waves. It sounded like the world was ending. I walked in alone. Francesca was in a van 2 blocks away, wired into the burner phone in my pocket. Jamal Waters, the journalist, was standing by, ready to hit publish on his live feed page. Father Alvarez was at the shelter, praying, his own copy of the feed recording to a secure server. Luca was somewhere in the dark, close, he had promised, but out of sight. They won't see me coming. The restaurant was empty, tables and chairs stacked. Then, from the kitchen, they emerged. Matteo Cavallo looked like a bulldog in a $1,000 suit. He was flanked by 2 men who looked like they'd been carved from granite, but it was the person with him who made my stomach clench. District Attorney Beatrice Klein. She was wearing a black raincoat, her face set in a look of professional concern, as if she were supervising a legitimate sting. "Miss Hayes," she said, her voice crisp, "I'm glad you decided to cooperate. Handing over stolen property is the first step towards showing the court you're a fit mother." The audacity of it. The threat was immediate, wrapped in the language of the law. Cavallo just grunted, "The drive." I held up my hand. "We have terms, before you get anything." Klein actually laughed, a short, sharp, ugly sound. "Terms, sweetheart, you are in a room with the district attorney and a concerned citizen. You're not in a position to set terms." "Then you're not getting the drive," I said, my voice shaking. "I hated it. I hated her." Cavallo took a step. "Give it to me." "Warehouse 4, I said, fast, pushing the words out before my nerve broke. "You have 6 women there. They came over in one of your containers. You're holding them." Cavallo's face went blank. Klein's, however, flickered. "Let them go," I said. "Make the call. Let them walk out the front door. We have eyes on the warehouse. When we confirm they're free, you get the drive." Klein stepped forward, her mask of civility dropping. You little fool. You think this is a courtroom? You think you're in charge?" "Yes," I said, "I do." I slipped my hand into my pocket and double-tapped the side of the burner phone. The live stream was active. "What you're in, Miss Klein," I said, my voice suddenly loud in the empty room, "is a press conference. You're live, along with Mr. Cavallo. Tell them about the community tech contract." Klein's face went white. She looked around, confused. "What did you say?" "The sightline cameras," I almost shouted, the adrenaline roaring in my ears. "The ones you used to spy on my apartment, the ones you were temporarily disabling every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 in the morning, so Mr. Cavallo could move his inventory. Tell the city about that." On the stream, I knew Jamal had just pulled up the spreadsheets, the payment logs, the blackout schedule. Klein's eyes widened in pure, undiluted panic. "You shut it off. Shut that off right now. That's classified city data." She'd admitted it. She'd admitted it all. But Cavallo wasn't a politician. He didn't care about the stream. He understood leverage. He realized, in that instant, that I had just signed my own death warrant. He snarled, pulling his phone. "You're dead, Mar," he said, not to me, but to the phone. "The deal's off. Get the kid, at the brownstone. Now." My heart stopped. Mia. Oh, God, Mia. I had overplayed. I had gambled with my daughter. But before I could even scream, Francesca's voice was in my ear, calm, clear, and cold. "Nora, breathe. Sal took the bait. Cavallo's main team is in Midtown, surrounding an empty bank vault. The men he just called, they're walking into a reinforced house filled with Luca's security. Mia is not there. Luca moved her and his mother to the safe house an hour ago. She is safe." The wave of relief was so profound I almost collapsed. Cavallo looked at me. Seeing the change in my expression, he saw the trap. He knew he'd been played. He had no leverage. He had nothing. He lunged. He didn't go for the drive. He went for me. It was pure, animalistic rage. One of his men grabbed a chair, raising it. I scrambled backward, hitting the cold glass wall overlooking the river. I was trapped. Then the main doors of the restaurant exploded inward. Luca. He wasn't the calm, suited chairman. He was a force of nature, a shadow moving with impossible speed. He didn't have a weapon drawn. He was the weapon. He met the first man, a blur of motion. It wasn't a fight. It was a removal. The second man, the one with the chair, turned. He hesitated, seeing his partner drop. That was all Luca needed. Cavallo ignored him. He was still coming for me. He was 3 feet away when Luca turned, putting himself between us. The man with the chair, recovering, hurled it. He wasn't aiming at Luca, he was aiming at me. Luca saw it. He didn't try to block it. He just moved, spinning, grabbing me, and pulling me against his chest. He used his own body as a shield. The chair missed us. It hit the massive plate glass window right behind me. For a half second, nothing happened. There was just a spider web of cracks against the backdrop of the raging storm. Then, with a sound like a thunderclap, the entire wall of glass exploded. The nor'easter punched into the room. It was a physical blow. The wind screamed, a deafening, high-pitched howl. Icy rain and river water blasted us. The world dissolved into a chaos of flying glass, overturned tables, and the roar of the storm. I was pressed so hard against Luca I couldn't breathe. His arms were wrapped around me, his head down, shielding my face. I could feel the tension in every muscle of his back, a solid wall against the chaos. The cold was shocking, stealing the air from my lungs, but all I could feel was the heat rolling off him, the solid, unshakable anchor of his body. "Klein, get Klein!" someone shouted. But she was gone. The second the glass broke, the politician had fled, scrambling out a back exit. Francesca Luca yelled over the wind. "Got it," her voice crackled in my ear, now filled with static. "The stream is down, the platform cut the feed, but Jamal has the file, Alvarez has the file. We got it. Nora, we got the confession." Cavallo was also gone, like the rat he was. He had used the explosion as cover. Luca's security team was inside now, securing his 2 men, but Cavallo himself had vanished through a service door that led to the docks. We heard the roar of a boat engine, already fading into the storm. The siren started then, not distant, close, getting closer. Luca released me, but kept one hand locked on my arm. The restaurant was a wreck, open to the night, the river, and the storm. "Police," he said, his voice rough. "Klein's police. They won't be here to arrest her. They'll be here for you." He was already pulling me toward the kitchen, away from the sirens. "You have a choice. Nora?" "Right now," he said, shoving open the kitchen door. The wind tore at us. "You can wait here. Wait for them. Trust the system. Trust what we just recorded. Francesca will find you. She'll be your lawyer." He pointed to the chaos we'd just left. "Or you can come with me. Right now. Out the back. To Mia." He stared at me, his face wet, his eyes black in the emergency lighting. "But if you come, you're in. There's no more halfway." This was it, the system or the shadow, the DA who tried to take my daughter, or the man who had just used his own body to shield me. My hand went to my chest, my fingers closing around the cold, hard metal of the compass. Don't let anyone else set your north. The sirens were screaming, just outside, the police, the law. I looked at Luca. "I'm coming," I said, my voice ripped away by the wind. "Not for you." I had to make sure he understood. Only for Mia. A flicker of something passed over his face, but he just nodded, his grip on my arm tightening. "Good enough," he growled, and he pulled me into the alley, into the heart of the storm. We didn't go back to the brownstone. We drove for what felt like an hour, the nor'easter chasing us, the black Mercedes cutting through the flooded streets of New Jersey until we reached a quiet residential neighborhood I didn't recognize. The car pulled into another subterranean garage, this one smaller, attached to a modern-looking condo building. When the elevator doors opened, we were in a warm, carpeted hallway. Luca's mother, a small, elegant woman with tired eyes, was waiting at an open door, and behind her, holding a new picture she'd drawn, was Mia. She ran to me. "Mommy, you're all wet." I fell to my knees and grabbed her. Burying my face in her hair, she smelled like apples and sleep. For 1 second, I let the terror, the cold, and the fight drain out of me. She was safe. That was all that mattered. "You're safe," I whispered to her, but I was really telling myself. We were hurried inside. The safe house was anonymous, but Luca's mother had made it a home. While I was stripping off my soaked clothes in the bathroom, I heard Luca's voice, low and urgent, from the living room. "Turn on the news." When I came out, wrapped in a thick robe, my face was on the television. Beatrice Klein, looking poised and professional, stood in front of the wrecked, glassless restaurant. She was already spinning the narrative. "A brazen attack by the Moretti crime organization," she was saying, her voice filled with manufactured outrage. "They attempted to intimidate the district attorney's office, destroying public property and endangering the lives of city residents. We are currently searching for this woman, Nora Hayes." My mugshot filled the screen, the one from my nurse's ID. A known accomplice who lured my office into this violent trap. She's considered a person of interest, and her child, Mia Hayes, is believed to be with her. We are asking the public for any information. They were painting me as a terrorist, a runaway, an unfit mother who had dragged her child into a criminal enterprise. "She's not just controlling the narrative," Francesca said, her voice grim. She was on her laptop, her face pale. "She's using it." Just then, my phone, the new one Luca had given me, buzzed with an email. It was a forwarded alert to Francesca's office. An emergency petition from Child Protective Services. "They're executing," Francesca said, her voice shaking with rage. "They're citing the news report, immediate danger to the minor. They have a 24-hour emergency order to take custody of Mia. They're claiming you're a fugitive and non-compliant. Nora, they're gonna hunt you." This was it. The final move. They had cut off every legal avenue. If I was found, I'd be arrested, and Mia would be gone. If I hid, I was a fugitive, and Mia would be gone. Klein had checkmated me. I looked at Mia, who was happily showing Luca's mother her drawing of a purple seal. I began to tremble. A deep, uncontrollable shaking that started in my chest. Luca looked at me, at my terror. He looked at the television, at Klein's lying face, and I saw something in him change. The calculation was gone. The coldness was gone. All that was left was a white-hot, righteous fury. "She wants to use the public," he said, his voice a low growl. "Fine." He picked up his phone. "Father Alvarez," he said, "it's time. Clear the church. We're holding a press conference. Right now." The community hall at St. Gabriel's was packed. Luca hadn't just called the news crews Klein controlled. He had called Jamal Waters. He had called the local bloggers, the community activists, and the people from the shelter. These weren't just reporters, they were neighbors. I stood in the back, in the shadows of an alcove, holding Mia's hand. I was wearing a borrowed dress. I felt like an imposter. Father Alvarez, his face a mask of grim determination, stepped up to the podium. "We are here," he said, "because the truth is being held hostage. We are here to set it free." Then Luca walked up. He didn't look like a CEO or a crime boss. He just looked like a man who had run out of patience. The cameras flashed. The questions started. "Mr. Moretti, is it true you attacked the district attorney? Are you taking back control of the docks?" Luca held up a hand. Silence. "My name is Luca Moretti," he said, his voice ringing through the hall. No microphone needed. "I was born into a family with a complicated legacy. I have spent the last 10 years trying to build something legitimate, something my father and his father were not. But the past is a heavy anchor." He looked right into the main camera. "I'm not here to deny my family's mistakes. I am here to confess them. And I am here to show you that the woman promising to clean up this city is the one holding the mop for the mob." He nodded to Jamal, who was running the AV. "This," Luca said, "is from last night." He played the clip. The audio was clean. My voice, high and thin. "Tell them about the community tech contract." And then Klein's voice, panicked and furious. "Shut it off! Shut that off right now! That's classified city data." The hall erupted. "That," Luca said over the noise, "is your district attorney, Beatrice Klein, admitting to a secret, classified data-sharing agreement with the man who has been terrorizing the port, the same agreement she used to spy on a private citizen, the same agreement she used to temporarily disable community cameras so her partners could operate. He wasn't done. She calls me a criminal, but she's the one who gave them the keys." He then signaled to the side. 3 women, their faces hidden in shadow, their voices digitally altered, stepped up to a separate microphone, one by one. They told their stories, how they had been brought here, held at Warehouse 4, their passports taken. The room was silent. This was no longer a media story. It was a confession. "Beatrice Klein knew," Luca said, his voice raw. "The data on this drive, which we have provided to federal authorities, proves it." He paused, and his eyes scanned the crowd. "They found me." He looked right at me, at Nora Hayes, the fugitive, the accomplice. Miss Klein's final move, her only move, was to attack the woman who found this data. She has filed an emergency motion to take Nora Hayes' child, to silence her, to punish her. He took a breath, and his entire posture changed. He was no longer a general. He was just a man. "I cannot, by myself, stop a corrupt DA from weaponizing the family court system. I cannot give Nora the shield she deserves. I cannot, legally, stand between her daughter and a state that is trying to steal her." He took a step away from the podium, walking toward me. The cameras followed him, a wave of flashing lights. He stopped 10 feet away. "But we can," he said, his voice suddenly quiet, yet everyone heard it. "I was born into a name burdened with mistakes, but I am asking her to let me give that name and all the resources and protection that come with it to her and her daughter as a shield." as a promise. The world stopped. I stopped breathing. "Nora Hayes," he said, and I could see the pulse in his neck. "I am asking you, in front of this city and in front of God, to marry me." It wasn't a proposal. It was a declaration of war. It was a legal maneuver so brilliant, so public, that Klein couldn't counter it. He was offering Mia his name, his protection, making her his legal daughter instantly. I was dizzy. The cameras were blinding me, trapped. I was trapped again, by a man, in public. But then I looked at Mia. She was staring at Luca, not with fear, but with curiosity. I took her hand and I walked forward, pushing through the wall of cameras. I walked right up to him. The room was dead silent. "I have conditions," I said, my voice shaking, but loud. Luca didn't blink. "Name them." "A prenuptial agreement," I said, "ironclad. If you ever become the man you say you're leaving behind, if you lie to me, if you return to any of it, I get everything. Full, sole custody of Mia. And all assets, all property designated for her, it's locked to me, forever. You walk away with nothing." A murmur went through the crowd. I was a nurse from Newark, demanding the keys to the Moretti kingdom. Luca stared at me, and a slow, small smile touched his lips. It was the first time I'd seen him smile. "I accept," he said. "And," Francesca said, stepping out of the shadows, "it's already drafted." She held out a thick document. She looked at me, a flash of shared understanding in her eyes. "I anticipated you would require a path of your own. Nora, the terms are exactly as you stated. He gets nothing. You and Mia get everything." She handed me the document and a pen. I flipped to the last page. The clauses were there. Iron. I looked at Luca. He took the pen from my hand, didn't even glance at the document, and signed his name on the line. He handed the pen back to me. He was giving me all the power. I looked at Mia, who had her face buried in my side. I touched the silver compass at my neck. It was warm from my skin. "Set your own north." I signed my name, Nora Hayes. "Now," Luca said to the stunned room, "we're getting married. Father Alvarez and Judge Miller are waiting in the chapel. You are all welcome to bear witness." It was a mad scramble. We were in the small stone chapel, a judge I didn't know, with a kind face, Father Alvarez, Francesca, Mia, and about 30 reporters. Just as the judge opened his mouth, Jamal Waters' phone buzzed. He cursed and showed the screen to Luca. On the screen was a video, grainy. It was me, in a dark alley taking a thick envelope of cash from one of Cavallo's men. It was a lie, a fabrication. "Deep fake," a new voice said from the back of the chapel. We all turned. A young man in a hoodie was walking forward, holding a tablet. "Matteo Cavallo just posted that. It's a digital forgery." He stopped and looked at me. "Jamal Peterson," he said, "data engineer. You don't remember me, but I remember you. Newark Community, last year. I came in with chest pains. The attending said it was anxiety. You looked at my chart, you looked at me, and you yelled at him until he ran an EKG. You saved my life." He held up his tablet. "My turn." He showed the judge. "The metadata is corrupt. The audio is spliced from 3 different sources. And look," he zoomed in on my hand, "the pixels, they're rendered. I can testify in any court that is a 100% fabricated video." Cavallo's last bullet had been blocked. The judge looked at the tablet, then at Jamal, then at us. He nodded. "The state has no further objections." He smiled. "Let's proceed." It was fast. No music, no flowers, just the click of cameras and the sound of the rain still beating on the stained glass windows. We stood in front of the altar. Luca turned to me. His hands were bare. My hands were bare. He took mine. They were warm, solid. "Luca," he said, his voice rough. He said the words. I said mine. It felt unreal, like a play. "I now pronounce you," the judge said. It was over. I was Mrs. Moretti. Luca didn't move. He just looked at me, his eyes searching my face. He saw the fear. He saw the confusion. He saw the fight. He leaned in, and I flinched, thinking he would kiss me for the cameras. But he didn't. He stopped, his lips just brushing my ear, a promise meant only for me, the only vow that mattered in this entire, insane day. "You're not alone," he whispered. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't. The word married hung in the air, a legal shield that felt as heavy as armor. We didn't have a reception. We had an exfiltration. Luca's security, now a visible, coordinated force, moved us from the chapel into a black SUV before the press could even form a cohesive mob. Mia was already inside, strapped into a high-end car seat, fast asleep, looked after by Luca's mother, who simply nodded at me, one survivor to another. The first victory came 12 hours later. We were back at the anonymous condo, which now felt less like a safe house and more like a command center. Francesca walked in, looking like she hadn't slept in a year, but her eyes were bright. "The petition has stayed," she announced, dropping a file on the table. "The judge from the wedding. He's a friend of my father's, but he's also a stickler for the law. He watched Klein's confession from the press conference. He's formally requested that the DA's office provide a full explanation for the classified data sharing agreement before any motions related to the fugitive Nora Hayes Moretti can be heard." She let the new name hang in the air, Hayes Moretti. It sounded foreign, a clumsy joining of two worlds, but it had worked. CPS was, for the moment, toothless. "They're not just backing off," Luca said, walking into the room. He was fresh from a shower, dressed in a clean shirt, but the shadows under his eyes were deep. "They're investigating her." "And Sal?" Francesca asked. Luca's face hardened. "My cousin talked extensively. He was terrified. Cavallo had threatened his son. He gave us everything." He tossed a phone onto the table. "The Sightline system doesn't just have blackouts. It has a back door, a priority account that can access, delete, or overwrite any footage from any camera at any time." "Let me guess," I said, feeling the cold certainty. "You don't have to," Lucas said. He tapped the phone. A file opened. It was a login name, D.A. Klein Priority. "She wasn't just watching the blackouts," I whispered. "She could erase anything she wanted. She could frame anyone. She could make me disappear from the footage of my own street." "She did," Francesca said. "We pulled the logs for your block, your visits to the corner store, the bus stop according to Sightline. You barely existed until the day they sent the photos to CPS. I was a ghost they could turn on and off." "So," I said, pushing back from the table, "what's the plan? We wait here while the feds build a case." Luca looked at me. "The plan is you and Mia stay here. My mother will be with you. You are safe. I will handle Cavallo. Francesca will handle Klein." I walked over to the window. The nor'easter had passed, leaving the sky a bruised, scrubbed gray. "No, Nora, this isn't a debate," Lucas said, his voice dropping into that low, authoritative rumble. "You are a civilian. You're a mother. You are also, now, the public face of this. You're a target." "I have been a target since you found me at that bus stop," I said, turning to face him. "The difference is, now I have a name. You gave it to me as a shield. I'm going to use it as a weapon." "What does that mean?" Francesca asked, a glint of interest in her eye. "It means I am done hiding." I said, "Mrs. Moretti doesn't hide. She doesn't cower in a condo. Those women, the ones from Warehouse 4, where are they?" "A different safe house," Francesca said. "They're terrified." "Good, let's go see them. You're a lawyer, I'm a nurse. We're going to get their official testimony, and we're going to do more. We're going to teach them how to protect themselves." "Protect themselves," Lucas said, crossing his arms. "My men are—" "Not with guns," I said, cutting him off. "With data, with my skills. Klein and Cavallo are winning because they control the information. So we'll build our own network. We'll teach those women and the people at the shelter and the nurses at the clinic the 3-2-1 backup rule. 3 copies of every piece of evidence on 2 different types of media, with 1 copy stored off-site, We'll build an army of witnesses they can't erase. The next few days were a blur, while Luca disappeared into the city's financial district, doing whatever he was doing. Francesca and I went to work. Klein was fighting back, of course. The mainstream news was flooded with expert opinions on how the video from the church was taken out of context, how the deep-fake video of me taking money was still under investigation, and how the Moretti family was using a vulnerable single mother to orchestrate a violent takeover of the port. They were telling their story, so I told mine. We couldn't buy TV time, so we used the street. Jamal Peterson, the data engineer, helped me set up a simple, decentralized storage page. It couldn't be taken down easily. It held the full, unedited clip of Klein. It held Jamal's video breaking down the deepfake, frame by frame, and it held the anonymous, audio-only testimony of the 6 women from the warehouse. We printed flyers, hundreds of them, with a simple QR code. The DA is lying to you. Here is the truth. I went back to my clinic, not as a nurse, but as an advocate. I gave them to the orderlies. I gave them to the patients in the waiting room. Father Alvarez distributed them at his shelter. We turned the city into our own broadcast network. The truth started to leak, from the bottom up. Luca came back on the 4th night. I had just gotten Mia to sleep. I found him in the living room, staring at the lights of the city, a glass of something dark in his hand. "It's done," he said. "What's done?" "The money." He turned. He looked tired, but satisfied. "Cavallo doesn't run on fear. Nora, he runs on cash. He has 2 major shipping contracts from Italy that pay for his entire operation. They're his main artery. And the families that run those shipping lines, they're old families. My grandfather knew their grandfathers. They didn't like doing business with a man like Cavallo. They just needed a compelling reason to switch. And you gave them one." And I said, "I gave them a choice," he said. "Continue to associate with a man who is about to be indicted on federal charges, a man who traffics women and attacks DAs, or move their business to a new, legitimate, secure logistics partner, me." He had cut off Cavallo's money, all of it, in one day. I should have felt relieved, but a cornered animal is the most dangerous. "He's going to retaliate, Luca. He's not just going to—" The words died in my throat. Luca's personal phone, the one that never rang, was buzzing on the counter. He looked at it. His face didn't change, but the stillness that came over him was the most terrifying thing I had ever seen. He picked it up. Yes. He listened. I watched the muscle in his jaw tighten. Once. Where? He listened again, then he hung up. He didn't move. "Luca, what is it? What's wrong?" He turned to me, and his eyes were black. They were voids. "He's desperate," Luca said, his voice flat. "He lost the money. He's about to be indicted. He has nothing left to bargain with." "What did he do?" "He went to the Glenwood Hills nursing facility an hour ago. He took my mother." My hand flew to my mouth. His mother, the kind woman who was in the next room, reading Mia a bedtime story. "Wait," I said, my mind racing. "Your mother isn't, she's here. I just saw her." "Not my mother," he said. "My grandmother. My father's mother. She has Alzheimer's. She's been at Glenwood for 5 years. It was quiet, secure. Cavallo had taken a 90-year-old, sick woman. He wanted to trade her for the original drive. He wanted to trade her for me. Luca was already moving. He was pulling a heavy case from a closet. "You and Mia and my mother are leaving. My men will take you to the brownstone. You will not open the door. For anyone." "No," I said. "Nora, this is the end. This is not a debate. This is not a discussion. This is blood. You will be safe." "You'll be going in blind," I said, my mind racing. Glenwood Hills, Glenwood. "Luca, wait. The calendar, the Sightline calendar from the drive." He stopped. "What?" "The blackouts, I was looking at it this morning. There were 2 sets of blackout times. One was for the port. The other was a set of streets I didn't recognize. In the suburbs. near Glenwood Hills. I ran to Francesca's laptop. I pulled up the file. Look, every Tuesday and Saturday, at 7:05 p.m., the cameras on that block go dark for 3 minutes. Luca grabbed his phone, pulling up a file of his own. The nursing home, the main staff shift change is at 7 p.m. My blood ran cold. He wasn't just hiding her there. Luca, he was using it. It's one of his operation nodes. Klein was giving him cover. He's not holding her in a random room. He's holding her in his own secure base of operations. Luca looked at the schedule, then at me. We know when to go, I said. Right at 7:05. During the shift change, during the blackout, they'll be blind and they'll be distracted. He stared at me, his face a mask of conflict. I'm not asking to go, Luca, I said, walking up to him. I'm telling you, that is my data. That is my discovery. That is my fight. He came for me. He came for my daughter. I am going to be there when you take him down. You promised. You're not alone. That goes both ways. The raid was chaos. We moved in at 7:03 p.m. under the cover of the shift change. Luca's team, dressed as orderlies and EMTs, neutralized the security feed before the blackout even hit. I was supposed to stay with Francesca at the van, but in the confusion, an alarm went off. Not a fire alarm, a panic alarm. Luca and his team went left. I saw a door, a stairwell. I knew Cavallo wouldn't be in the basement. He'd be at the top. I ran. I found myself in a hallway. It was dark, quiet, a private wing. And then I heard him, Matteo Cavallo's voice. You think you're smart. You think you won. I froze. He was in a room at the end of the hall. I crept forward. The door was ajar. He was there, standing over a small woman in a wheelchair who looked up at him with confused, vacant eyes. Luca's grandmother. And he was holding a gun. You took my business, he hissed, not to the old woman, but to his phone. You took my money, so I take your blood. He saw me. His eyes widened, and a slow, ugly smile spread across his face. Or maybe I take yours, a wife for a grandmother. He raised the gun, his arm steady. He was aiming it right at my heart. There was no time to run, to scream. This was it. I'd survived everything just to end like this, in a dark hallway in a nursing home. I closed my eyes. A sound, a roar. Luca? He came from the side, a blur of motion. He had come up the other stairs. He didn't go for the gun. He went for Cavallo, hitting him with the full force of his body. The gun went off. The sound was deafening in the small hallway, a bright flash. I felt a punch in my chest, a massive, staggering blow that knocked the air from my lungs and threw me back against the wall. I slid to the floor, my hand flying to my chest. I'm hit. Oh, God, Mia. Luca and Cavallo were on the ground, a brutal tangle of limbs, but I couldn't hear them. I could only hear the ringing in my ears. I looked down. My hand was shaking. I wasn't bleeding. My fingers touched it, the silver compass. I pulled it out. The chain was broken. The silver was scarred, blackened. A deep, ugly dent marred the lid, right over where the needle would be. The bullet? It hadn't hit me. It had hit the compass, my father's compass. The doors at the end of the hall burst open, but it wasn't Luca's men. It was uniforms, blue, state police. Hands up on the ground now. Luca was already standing, breathing hard. Cavallo was on the floor, his fight gone. The police swarmed him, cuffs snapping. Luca rushed to me, his eyes wild with terror. Nora, you're... He saw the compass in my hand. He saw the dent. He saw the scorched mark on my shirt. He reached out a trembling hand and his fingers brushed the broken metal. It saved you, he whispered, his voice cracking. No, I said, my voice a ragged breath. I looked at him, the man who had thrown himself at a gunman to deflect his aim. We saved me. A state trooper, his face grim, touched his cap. Mr. Moretti, ma'am, he's in custody. Luca had made another call. He hadn't just brought his own team. He had called the state police, a force Klein couldn't touch. As they led Cavallo away, my phone buzzed. It was a news alert from Jamal. Dia Beatrice Klein indicted on federal racketeering charges. U.S. Attorney cites overwhelming evidence from anonymous whistleblower. It was over. It was really over. The silence that followed the arrests was louder than the nor'easter had ever been. The storm passed, the sirens faded, and the city was left to reckon with the rot we'd exposed. The weeks that followed weren't a celebration. They were a deposition. My life became a blur of lawyers' offices, federal buildings, and testimony, but this time, I wasn't a victim. I was the key witness. Beatrice Klein's fall was swift and brutal. The evidence on the drive, combined with Sal's testimony and the live-streamed confession, was a coffin nail. But the real victory, the one I had fought for, was what happened to Sightline. A federal judge didn't just shut it down, he placed it under federal receivership. And in a move that shocked everyone, he cited the organized community action, our flyer campaign, Jamal's journalism as a precedent. The court mandated that Sightline's source code be turned over to an independent auditing team. "They're opening the black box," Francesca told me, her eyes shining with a lawyer's righteous glee. But I wasn't satisfied. "An audit isn't enough," I said. "We need oversight by the people they spied on." So, I testified again, not just about the data, but about the principle. I proposed a civilian review board and, astonishingly, they agreed, Father Alvarez, Jamal Waters. And to my complete shock, I was asked to sit on the board. We were, as Jamal put it, the committee to watch the watchmen. While I was fighting in courtrooms, Luca was fighting in boardrooms. He was true to his word. I came home to the brownstone, which was now, confusingly, our home one evening to find the library filled with boxes. He was dissolving companies. He was selling off properties I didn't even know existed. He was liquidating every asset that had even a shadow of his father's or grandfather's influence. "It's dirty money," and he said simply, signing a document with a final, vicious flourish. "It's an anchor, and it's the only thing Cavallo or his associates could ever hold over me." "So, you're just giving it all away?" I asked, stunned. "Not giving it away," he said. He pulled out a new file, one with a clean, modern logo. "I'm redirecting it." He pushed a prospectus across the desk. "The Silver Compass Fund." My breath caught. "Luca?" "A scholarship," he said, not looking at me. His voice suddenly thick. "For single mothers in Newark and the boroughs, to go to school for tech, for medicine, for whatever they need to build their own shield." He finally met my gaze. "It saved your life. Nora, the least it can do is help save a few more." That was the man I was married to. Not the one who had intimidated me at a bus stop, but the one who understood that redemption wasn't a word. It was an action. A very, very expensive one. He poured everything he had left into his one clean company, the Moretti logistics firm. And with Cavallo's contracts now his, it became the only legitimate game in town. My own life began to find its new north. I went back to the ER at Newark Community. My old boss looked at me, at the Mrs. Moretti on my new ID, and just raised an eyebrow. "I assume you're not here for the paycheck." "I need to be here," I told him, "but I can't do nights anymore. I need flexible hours." He just nodded. "Welcome back, Hayes Moretti. Don't cause any more federal indictments." But the clinic wasn't enough. The work I'd done with Francesca, teaching the women from the warehouse that had lit a new fire in me. I used some of the Silver Compass Fund's seed money, a grant I applied for, formally to open a small office in the back of Father Alvarez's shelter. The sign was simple: Community Data Consulting. Your life is your data. Learn to protect it. I taught people how to spot deep fakes. I taught women in shelters how to securely back up evidence of harassment. I used my clinical informatics background to help patients navigate their own complex medical records, to fight insurance companies. I had found my place, not a nurse, not a mafia wife. I was an advocate. And Mia, my bright, beautiful Mia, she turned 5. On a bright, clear September morning, I walked her to her first day of kindergarten. She was so proud, her backpack almost bigger than she was. "Are you scared, Mommy?" she asked, her small hand tight in mine. "A little," I admitted. "It's okay," she said, parroting the words I'd said to her so many times. "We're not alone." As we got to the classroom, she pulled something from her pocket. It was a paper bird, a dove, not perfect and sharp like the one left on my table, but clumsy, a little crumpled, and colored bright purple. "It's for the new friends," when she said, and ran inside, a symbol of hope, not a threat. That night, Luca came home late. I was in the kitchen, and he didn't come up behind me. He didn't grab me. That was one of the rules. He stood in the doorway until I turned around. "You're home, and I said, "I'm home," he confirmed. "How was her first day?" "She cried, I cried, it was perfect." He smiled, that small, rare smile. Good. This was our marriage. It was not a romance novel. It was not happily ever after. It was work. We lived in the brownstone, but my name was on the deed, right next to his. The prenup was framed, a copy of it, in Francesca's office. We had boundaries, we had arguments, we went to therapy. Our first session had been a disaster. The therapist, a no-nonsense woman Francesca had recommended, had asked us to talk about power dynamics. I had laughed, a short, bitter sound. "He's Luca Moretti. I was a broke single mom. What do you think the dynamic is?" Luca had flinched. "I proposed to you in public. I forced your hand." "Yes, you did," I said. "It was a power move, Luca, a shield, but also a cage." The therapist looked at him. "And how does that feel?" Luca, hearing that. He had been silent for a full minute. "It feels accurate. My entire life. I have been taught to solve problems by applying force, by taking control. I don't know how to ask." "Then learn," I had whispered. And he did. He learned to knock on Mia's door. He learned to ask me about my day before talking about his. He learned to sit in silence when I was angry, instead of trying to fix it. And I learned to unclench my fists. I learned that his quietness wasn't a threat. It was him trying. I learned that the trust he was building wasn't in grand gestures, but in the small, everyday acts of respecting my no. He never violated the terms of our agreement, not once, and that, in its own way, was the most romantic thing he could have ever done. The old world was still there. Jamal Waters won a state journalism award for his series on the Klein indictment, which he'd titled The Sightline. Father Alvarez kept his safe, but now it held data drives for the entire community. Luca's promise, "You're not alone," I had been redefined. It wasn't about ownership. It wasn't about him saving me. It was about partnership. It was about two people, scarred and complicated, choosing to stand together with clear, defined boundaries. One afternoon, Mia found the broken silver compass in my jewelry box. "It's broken, Mommy." I picked it up, the dented metal warm in my hand. "No, sweetie, it's just finished." "But how will you know which way to go?" she asked. I smiled and knelt, touching the center of her chest, because when you get lost, you can look at a compass, but the real one, the one that matters, it's in here. She put her hand over mine, her small face serious. "It's in my heart." "It's in your heart," I said. That night, after Mia was asleep and Luca was in the library, probably on a conference call with Italy, I was clearing my inbox, an email, from an encrypted anonymous address. No subject line, no signature. Just 6 words. Klein was just one node. The email sat in my encrypted inbox for a week. Klein was just one node. 6 words that felt exactly like the first cold raindrops of the nor'easter, a warning, a promise that the fight wasn't over. But in the kitchen, the world was, for the first time, quiet. The smell woke me, not the stale, recycled air of the safe house or the metallic tang of fear from my old apartment. It smelled like coffee and burnt sugar. I walked into the kitchen of the brownstone. The morning light was flooding the room, catching the dust motes dancing in the air. And Luca, my husband, a word that still felt strange and angular in my mind, was at the stove. He was wearing a dark t-shirt and sweats, and he was concentrating with the same lethal intensity he'd used to dismantle Cavallo's empire, but he was concentrating on batter. "Mommy!" Mia yelled, banging her small feet against the legs of her chair. "Daddy's making a giraffe!" Luca glanced over, a flicker of a smile on his face. He deftly flipped the pancake. It was not a giraffe. It was a blob, a very dark, vaguely long-necked blob. "It's a modern interpretation," Luca said, his voice a low rumble. Mia giggled and clapped. "A blob giraffe." I poured a cup of coffee. My hands steady, I watched them. This was the work. This was the trust, being built not with words, but with burnt pancakes. This was the action we talked about in therapy. But the old habits, the instincts I'd honed in poverty and fear, they die hard. While Mia was negotiating the terms of surrender with the blob giraffe, it required at least 2 ounces of maple syrup. I slipped away, my coffee cup in hand. I walked down the hall to the library. Behind a false shelf of 19th century legal texts was a steel panel, and behind that, the panic room. My hand went to the keypad. I typed in the code. The heavy, vacuum-sealed door hissed open. I did what I always did. I checked the air filtration. I checked the expiration dates on the food rations and the water bottles. I checked the battery on the satellite phone. My muscles moved with a memory I couldn't erase. The muscle memory of a person who is always ready to run. The seals are good. I jumped, spilling my coffee. Luca was standing in the library doorway, watching me. He wasn't judging, he wasn't angry. He was just waiting. I looked at the small, sterile room. It was a prison. It was a tomb. It was the past. "I know," I said. I stepped back out into the warm, sunlit library. I looked at Luca, and then I reached back, took the heavy door, and pulled it shut. The click of the lock engaging sounded final. I had locked it from the outside. "It's just a storage room now," I said. "We're running low on paper towels." He nodded, the smallest, almost invisible, sign of relief. "I'll add it to the list." My new normal wasn't just in the brownstone. It was outside. It was at the community center, in the same hall where Luca had proposed. 3 copies, I said, my voice echoing in the room. 2 different formats, 1 copy stored off-site. Your phone is your witness, but it is also your liability. We're going to teach you how to make your data bulletproof. The workshop was full. Women from the port, women from the shelters, women who had heard about the silver compass clause that Francesca was relentlessly pushing in Albany. She was trying to make it state law no municipality could use surveillance technology that hadn't been independently audited. She was using my story, my name, as the battering ram. I looked up and my breath hitched. There were 2 police officers in the back of the room, not Luca's security, NYPD. I faltered, my old fear spiking. Cops meant CPS. Cops meant Klein. But one of the officers, a woman with a kind, tired face, caught my eye. She didn't look suspicious. She looked interested. She picked up one of my flyers on data encryption and started to read it. When one of the women from the shelter looked at her nervously, the officer just smiled. "Go on, ma'am," she said. "This is good information." They weren't here to watch me. They were here to learn. The ground had shifted. The ground was shifting for Luca, too. He was fighting a war I couldn't see, a war with a ghost, his own. He came home late one evening. I was in the library, working on the framework for the emergency foster certification. "We lost the bid," he said, standing in the doorway. He wouldn't enter until I looked up. It was one of his rules, our rules. "What bid?" "The computer contract for the new clinic wing, the one the Silver Compass Fund is paying for." "I don't understand," I said. "We are the funding." The hospital board vetoed it. They wouldn't accept the donation from any entity with the name Moretti on it. He rubbed his face. The picture of exhaustion. It's still dirty. Nora in their eyes, the name. The old Luca, the one I'd first met, would have threatened them. He would have bought the hospital. This Luca just looked defeated. "So what do we do?" I asked, closing my laptop. "Do we change the name?" "And hide," he said, his voice rough. "That's what my father did. He hid behind shell companies. I won't I told them we would be fully transparent. I offered them our books, all of them. And they're scared. Then we let them be scared, I said, standing up. But we don't hide. We keep building. We show them. That's the only way. He looked at me, a strange vulnerability in his eyes. I went to confession, he said, the words quiet, almost tumbling out. At St. Gabriel's, Father Alvarez, he listens. He stared at his hands that had done I didn't know what. I didn't want to know. I made a promise, he whispered, a vow to God that I'm done. No more violence, no more force, unless it's in defense of this family, of you, of Mia. It's the hardest promise I've ever made. He was fighting to break a cycle that was 100 years old. We were all fighting, Mia too. I found her in her room, sitting on the floor, surrounded by colored paper. She was folding. Her small brow was furrowed in concentration. She wasn't making doves. Not anymore. What are those, baby? Cranes, she said, not looking up. My teacher, Miss Anya, read us a book. She said if you fold 1,000, you get a wish. I smiled, sitting on the floor with her. What are you wishing for? A pony. I laughed. 1,000 is a lot of work for a pony. I know, she said, her face serious. That's why I'm only making 100, miss. Anya said they're also for hope. I'm making a wish for the city, so nobody is sad. She held up a small, perfectly creased, bright yellow crane. My throat tightened. She was healing. We were all healing. That night, I showed Luca the foster care application. The state is backlogged, I said. Francesca told me they're pulling 2 or 3 girls a week from port operations, but the shelters are full. They have nowhere to put them. Emergency placement. Luca looked at the application. He looked at me. Here, he said, in this house. This house isn't a home. Luca, not yet. It's a fortress. It's the safest place in New York. We're asking the board to be transparent with our name. Let's show them what that name can do. Let's make this house a sanctuary. I pointed to the line on the form. Are you willing to accept high-risk placements? We're not just registering, I said. We're telling them to send us the ones no one else will take, the ones who need these walls. He didn't hesitate. He picked up his phone. He didn't call a lawyer. He called the director of the state's family services. This is Luca Moretti, he said. I'm calling about an emergency foster application. I want to personally guarantee the security of the placement. He used the name, not as a weapon, but as a shield, for them. I found the broken compass the next day. I'd left it in my jewelry box, a broken relic. The bullet dent was deep, the silver scorched black. I took it. I went to the front hall, the massive entryway that always felt so cold. I drove a small, strong nail into the dark wood, right by the door. I hung the compass from it, its broken chain looped over the nail. It became our ritual. The next morning, Mia was the first one out the door for school. She bounded past, leaping up to tap the compass with her finger. For the city, she yelled. Luca came next. His briefcase in hand, he stopped, he looked at the compass, he didn't tap it. He reached out and put his thumb into the bullet's dent, a reminder, a penance, a promise. He held it there for a beat, then nodded to me, and left. I was last. I picked up my bag for the clinic, my workshop notes. I stopped at the door. I looked at the compass, my compass, the thing that had shown me north, and the thing that had stopped a bullet. I touched it, not for luck, not for penance, but as a reminder of the price of freedom. My phone buzzed. It was a new email, from the same encrypted address as before. They're moving on the docks. They're not Cavallo, they're worse. I read the message. I looked at the broken compass, hanging by the door of our safe house, and I opened the door and walked out into the sunlight. The summer that followed was a trial by fire, literally. The anonymous emails kept coming. They are watching the manifests. The new port director is theirs. They were cryptic, cold, and unsettling, but they were no longer the only thing I was afraid of. The past year had forged a new kind of armor. July rolled in and smothered the city under a heat dome. 102 degrees for 3 straight days. The power grid, old and overburdened, began to buckle. The air in the brownstone was cool, recycled by the massive generators Luca maintained, but outside, the city was suffocating. Then the grid failed. It wasn't a rolling blackout, it was a collapse. The entire western grid of the city, encompassing my old neighborhood, the port, and the community center, went dark. The brownstone, of course, stayed lit. The transition to backup power was seamless, but my first thought wasn't relief, it was Mrs. Petrov, my old landlord's mother. She was 90, lived 2 blocks from my old apartment, and was dependent on an electric oxygen concentrator. I was in the kitchen, my phone already dialing the clinic. When Luca came in, he wasn't in a suit. He was wearing cargo shorts and a black t-shirt, his face grim. "The logistics warehouse generators are online," he said, not as a statement of victory, but as an inventory. "They're stable." "That's good," I said, my mind racing. "But the clinic's generator just flooded. Father Alvarez's line is dead. The entire neighborhood is dark. Luca, the elderly, they're not going to last the night in this heat." He just looked at me. "What do you need?" "One of your generators, the big one at St. Gabriel's. Now." He didn't argue, and he didn't ask questions. He just picked up his phone. "Tony, I'm diverting the WH4 backup. I want it moved to St. Gabriel's Church. Yes, the whole thing. Get the flatbed. I want it running in 1 hour." It took 2. When I got to the church, it was chaos. People were spilling out onto the steps, fanning themselves, their faces slick with sweat and panic. Inside, Father Alvarez was trying to light candles, the air already stifling and thick. Then Luca's truck arrived. It wasn't a quiet delivery, it was a massive, diesel-powered generator, the size of a small car, lowered onto the sidewalk by a crane. His electricians, the same ones who maintained his secure warehouses, had it wired into the church's main breaker in 20 minutes. The ancient lights flickered, buzzed, and then flooded the sanctuary with a brilliant, steady glow. The air conditioners roared to life. A collective sigh, a gasp of relief, went through the crowd. We turned the church into a triage center. I wasn't Mrs. Moretti, the advocate. I was Nurse Hayes. I directed the volunteers. "We need a charging station, not for phones, for lives." We ran extension cords. We set up stations for nebulizers, for oxygen machines. We brought Mrs. Petrov in, her breathing already shallow. I put the mask on her myself. The media came, the local news, drawn by the only lights in a 10-block radius. They saw Luca, not in the shadows, but in the full glare of the floodlights, sleeves rolled up, unloading pallets of bottled water from one of his trucks. They saw me, checking the vitals of an elderly woman, yelling for more ice. The narrative we had fought so hard to build was, for the first time, being told for us. The heat wave finally broke 2 days later, but it wasn't the relief we'd prayed for. The fire started at 3 in the afternoon, a warehouse on the old Cavallo Strip. It had been abandoned since his arrest, a skeletal monument to his failed empire. Still full of chemicals his friends had never bothered to move. It went up fast. The smoke was a pillar of black, greasy poison climbing thousands of feet into the sky. Then the wind changed. It began to blow from the east, pushing the entire plume directly over the poorest, most densely populated part of the city, my old home. The city's warning system blared, shelter in place, chemical fire, toxic air quality. Shelter in place. I knew what that meant. It meant sealing yourself inside those old, unair-conditioned apartments. It meant breathing the poison that seeped through the window frames. It was a death sentence. "They can't stay there," I said, standing with Luca on the roof of the brownstone, watching the black clouds spread. "The bridges are gridlocked," he said. "The city is panicking. They can't get out." "Then we clean the air in." I grabbed his arm. "Your hardware connections. How fast can you get box fans and furnace filters and activated charcoal as much as you can find?" "Nora, what are you—" "I'm not asking. Luca, do it." I ran back to the church. The air was already tasting like burnt plastic. People were pouring in, coughing, their eyes watering. They were terrified. "Listen to me," I shouted, standing on a pew. "We can't leave. The city is locked down, but we are not going to sit here and breathe this. We are going to fight back." Luca's trucks arrived 40 minutes later. They were filled with hundreds of box fans, cases of duct tape, and every furnace filter and bag of activated charcoal he could source from 3 states. I stood in the center of the hall and I built one. I taped a filter to the back of a fan for the heavier smoke. I showed them how to build a Corsi Rosenthal box, a cube of filters that could scrub a room clean in minutes. I wasn't a nurse. I was an engineer. I was the leader of a resistance against the air itself. But Luca was looking at the river. "The air is poison. Nora, we can filter it, but we can't stop it. The wind is getting stronger." He turned away, his phone already in his hand. He didn't call his logistics manager. He scrolled down to a name in his contacts I had never seen, a name that felt old. His voice changed. It dropped. It lost the smooth, civilized edge of the boardroom and regained the gravel of the bus stop where I'd first met him. "This is Moretti," he said. "Yes, that Moretti. I need the boats. All of them, the ferries, the tugs. I need them at the Newark docks in 30 minutes. No, I'm not asking." He was cashing in a currency he had sworn to abandon, the fear, the favors, the legacy of his father, but he wasn't using it to move contraband. He was using it to move people. He hung up. "We're evacuating them, across the Hudson to Hoboken." It was an armada. Rusted tugboats, pleasure ferries, fishing boats, they all came. The old network, the one that ran on fear and history, had answered his call. We moved the elderly first, then the families. Mia was there. She'd refused to stay home. She had her backpack, the one full of her paper cranes, the 100 she had folded for the city. She walked right up to a small boy, maybe 4 years old, who was sobbing in his mother's arms, his face stained with soot. Mia just held out a bright yellow crane. "It's for Hope," she said, her voice clear and serious, "so you're not sad." The boy stopped crying and took it. And the media, they saw it all. They filmed the DIY air filters. They filmed the fleet of Moretti boats. They zoomed in on Mia, a small girl in a clean dress, handing a paper crane to a soot-covered firefighter. This time, there was no spin. There was no alternate narrative. The pictures told the entire story. The Moretti Hayes family wasn't defined by its past. It was being defined by its actions. We didn't get home until dawn. The fire was contained. The smoke was clearing. We were covered in soot, charcoal, and sweat. We smelled like the city we had just fought for. Francesca was waiting in the library, a cup of coffee in her hand, and a letter. It was on the coffee table. It wasn't an official document. It was cheap white paper, with words cut from magazines and pasted on. "Stop the Silver Compass Clause, or we'll stop you." I froze. It was a threat, a direct physical threat, after all this. But Francesca just sipped her coffee. She picked up the clumsy note, and she laughed. It was a sharp, genuine, contemptuous laugh. "This," she said, rattling the paper, "this is what they're reduced to. Cut and paste letters, anonymous emails." She looked at me, her eyes bright. "Don't you see, Nora, they're finished. They're out of moves. Klein is gone. Cavallo is gone. This is just the echo. They're not fighting us anymore. They're scared of us." She crumpled the note and tossed it into the fireplace. That weekend, another storm rolled in. Not a hurricane, just a summer thunderstorm, but the thunder was loud, shaking the windows of the brownstone. Mia, who was 6, was still afraid of the loud noises. I went to the front hall. I took the broken, dented compass from its nail on the wall. The silver was still scorched. I sat with her on the stairs, the sound of the rain lashing the windows. "It saved you," she whispered, touching the dent. "It did," I said, closing her small hand around it. "It belonged to my father, and now I want you to have it." Her eyes went wide. "But it's broken." "No," I said, my voice quiet. "It's not. It just did its first job. But its second job is more important." I held her hand, the heavy silver await in her small palm. "Mia," I said, "this is important. A compass, its only job is to point. It just shows you where north is. It just points the way." I tapped the compass, then tapped her lightly on the chest. "But you have to remember this. The compass only points. You are the one who decides to take the step." She looked at the compass, then at me. The thunder cracked overhead, right above the house. She held the compass tight. She didn't flinch. It was late, maybe 3 a.m. The brownstone was so quiet it felt like it was holding its breath. The city outside was a distant hum, a sleeping animal. I couldn't sleep. The anonymous emails had stopped. The last one there was a cold stone in my stomach. But for tonight, it was quiet. Francesca, who was now running for city council, said it was a good sign. It meant they were scared, reorganizing, and that we had time. But I knew, and she knew, that time was just a pause. I was in the library, the big, dark room lit only by a single desk lamp. I had a pen and a single sheet of the thick, cream-colored stationery Luca kept in the drawer. I was finally doing it. I was writing the letter. Ryan. The name looked alien, a word from a different language, a different, more desperate life. I don't know where you are. I don't know if you're alive or dead, and I've finally realized it doesn't matter. For 3 years. Your ghost has been the third person in every room I've been in. The man who left. The man who betrayed me. The man who looked at his own daughter and saw a hiding place. A lockbox made of flesh and bone. I hated you for it. I hated you for disappearing. But I think I hated you more for what you left behind. You didn't just leave a hard drive. You left a target. My hand wasn't shaking. The words came out smooth and clear. You taught me about data. You taught me how to find the back doors, how to see the patterns. You thought you were so much smarter than me, the girl from the clinic, but you missed the most important part of the data. You missed the human cost. You saw a system to be exploited. I saw a system that was hurting people. That's why you ran, and it's why I stayed. I'm not writing this for you. You will never read it. I'm writing this for me. I'm writing this to tell the ghost in the room that he has to leave now. You don't get to haunt this house. You don't get to have any more of my time. You don't get to have any claim on the woman I've become. She's not yours. And Mia, she's happy. She's safe. She's strong. She's everything you ran away from. I used to look at her and see you. Your eyes, your smarts. Now I just see her. She's folding paper cranes. She's wishing for a better city. She's the part of you that was worth saving. And she's all mine. I forgive you. Ryan, not for you, but for me. I'm letting you go. It's the last thing you'll ever take from me. I'm finally done. Nora, I folded the paper. Once. I didn't tear it up. It wasn't a moment of anger. It was a document, a closing entry in a ledger that had been open for far too long. I would put it in the safe with the prenup, a record. It's cold out here. I looked up. Luca was standing in the doorway, a thick cashmere blanket draped over one arm. He wasn't asking. He was just stating a fact. I couldn't sleep. I said. He nodded. Walking over. He didn't look at the letter. He never looked at my desk unless I showed him. It was one of our rules. He just held out the blanket. I took it and wrapped it around my shoulders. He sat, not in the chair opposite me, but on the steps of the small platform the desk was on. He sat at my feet, like a guard, or a partner. We sat in the quiet, just the tick of the antique clock. I'm afraid, he said, his voice a low rumble in the stillness. It was so out of character, so blunt, that I stopped breathing for a second, afraid of what? The emails, the people who are still out there. No, he said. He was staring at his own hands, clasped between his knees. Then we can fight. We have a plan. We have Francesca. We have the new commissioner. That's strategy. I understand that. He looked up at me, and his eyes were dark with a fear I'd only seen once before, the moment he thought I'd been shot. I'm afraid of him, he whispered, The man I was. The man my father raised me to be. The one who enjoyed the force of it. The one who knew how to solve a problem by making it disappear. His voice was raw. This was his confession. Not to a priest. To me. I feel him. Nora, when I get angry, when that board told me my name was too dirty, he was right there, in my throat. He wanted to buy the hospital and burn it to the ground. He wanted to find the man who threatened Francesca and do what my father would have done. He closed his eyes. I promised God, I promised you, but I am terrified that one day, you or Mia will be in a danger that strategy can't fix, and he'll come back, and he'll save the day, and you won't be able to look at me anymore, and I won't be able to look at myself. My heart ached. This was his prison, not the past, the future. I got up from the chair and sat on the step next to him, close enough that our arms brushed. I wrapped one side of the blanket around his shoulders. You're right to be afraid, I said quietly. He flinched, as if I'd slapped him. He's part of you, Luca, that man. He's in your DNA. Just like the scared, broke, desperate single mom is part of me. I locked the panic room, but I still know the code. I held his gaze. We don't get to erase who we were. We only get to decide what we do now. He was still tense, still lost in his fear. So, we have a contingency plan, I said, using the data term. He looked at me, confused. What? A contingency plan? For him? For that man? You think you're fighting him alone? You're not. I tapped his chest. You have your therapy. You have your confession. You have this community, the people you saved from the fire, the families in the Silver Compass program. They're your firewall. I touched his hand, and you have me. I'm your early warning system. I'm the one who will see him coming before you do. I'm the one who will tell you the truth, even when it's hard. I put my hand over his heart, and you have this, your vow, the one you made to me, the one that matters. He was looking at me, his eyes searching mine. We have a new vow, I said, my voice barely a whisper. You and me, a new promise for this new life. Nora? No more power in place of truth. I said, that's it. That's the entire rule. That's how we stay on this side. He stared at me for a long moment. He leaned in, slowly, giving me time to pull away. He rested his forehead against mine. His eyes were closed. No more power in place of truth, he repeated. It was a vow, an oath of allegiance. We sat like that, wrapped in the same blanket, breathing the same air. The new vow settled around us, a shield stronger than steel. After a long time, he said, I should check on Mia. We walked, together, down the hall. We stood in her doorway. She was fast asleep, her small face peaceful and hanging from her ceiling. From threads I had helped her string were the 100 paper cranes. The breeze from the cracked open window made them turn, a slow, silent mobile. They weren't just yellow, they were every color, a flock of silent, paper wishes, dancing in the dark. As they brushed against each other, they made the softest, faintest sound, a shushing, like a gentle rain. The city's wish for hope? He took my hand. His was warm, strong. He turned to me in the dim hallway, his face half in shadow. He didn't need to say it, but he did. For me. You're not alone, Nora. I smiled, the last of the ice around my heart. The peace I hadn't even known was still there, melted. I squeezed his hand. I know, I whispered, and I don't own you either. It was the truth, the one we had built, not possession, partnership. I let him go. When he went to his room, I went to mine. The next morning, I was up first. I walked to the front of the house, to the massive windows that faced east. The clock said 5:14. The sky over the Hudson was a pale, bruised purple. Then a line of liquid fire, of pure, molten gold, appeared over the edge of Brooklyn. The sun was coming. The first ray of light lanced through the window. It hit the wall by the door. It struck the silver compass, the one Mia had given back to me to hang. The metal exploded into a star of pure, white light. It was dented, it was scorched, it was broken. But the needle, steady and sure in the morning light, was still pointing north. Thank you so much for listening to our story. I'm so grateful you spent this time with us. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please drop a comment below, say hello, and share your thoughts. Let's build our own community, right here. And if you loved this story, please subscribe to our channel, Mafia Boss Stories, and give this video a like. And if you really loved it, please hit that hype button to help this story reach even more listeners. Your support means everything, and we'll see you in the next one.